good. Congressman, welcome.
Great to be with you, Julie. Thanks for having me again.
You had a great line last week in your presser on government shutdown saying most of what we do up here is bad. I think a lot of people agreed.
Yeah, I mean, we do lots of things to the American people while pretending to do things for the American people, and we certainly do a whole lot more harm than we do good. Thankfully, the Republican majority, we are at least slowing down the bad. I'd like us to be a little more bold and aggressive in pursuit of the good, but at least we're slowing down the bad.
Now, in light of your service on the Education and Workforce Committee, I wonder what you make of Biden's sort of end run around the Supreme Court and Congress on student loans.
Well, I think the president deserves to be impeached, quite frankly, not only for what may be uncovered, what seems to be the evidence, the mounting evidence of the Biden corruption, influence peddling, bribery scandal, which seems to meet this clear definition of impeachment, and not only because of the border invasion, which I don't think we need any more investigation, any more evidence to that effect. How do we allow that to happen for another 16, 17 months while he hopefully is only in office for? But the president continues to take actions that he himself says he does not have the constitutional authority to do. He did that with the student loan eviction moratorium. Frankly, he depleted the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the eve of the last election in an effort to buy votes, compromising national security. But here, in this context, he said himself, as did Nancy Pelosi, as his education secretary said within the last couple of years, they all said he did not have the authority to unilaterally spend taxpayer money, transfer student loan debt to those who did not borrow it. It would take an act of Congress. Congress did act. I sponsored the bill that overrode his unconstitutional, illegal student loan transfer scheme. It was a bipartisan effort in the Senate and the House, and then he vetoed it. Thankfully, the Supreme Court came in and declared it unconstitutional, but as you said, he continues to try to do things he knows he doesn't have the authority to do, and I think we should hold him accountable as a Congress.
Now, on the crime family allegations, though, so far, Congressman, they lack substantial proof. How do you deal with that? How do you get around that?
Well, there is mounting evidence and there is witness testimony. And I will remind you, going back to 2020 before the election, we had Tony Bobulinski, who came forward at great peril and risk to himself dealing with these individuals, and came forward and testified, or at least reported and was interviewed and said that, hey, he was in multiple meetings with the president, that the president was the big guy who was getting the 10%, and then much of the media ignored that, of course. The media has largely forfeited their responsibility, their historic task of holding all of government accountable and pursuing transparency, evidence, corruption, wherever the truth or the evidence may lead, and failed to do that. But here you do have testimony from IRS agents. Now you've got testimony apparently today, and of course the transcripts haven't been released yet, of Devin Archer. But Jamie Comer has told us that they've got these dozens of shell companies, these dozens of LLCs, these dozens of bank accounts where they've been told, hey, that those involved said, hey, we'll set these up so it'll take years to follow the trail and to find the money. Why would you do those things? Why would you create those entities except to hide or to launder money? So there's lots of smoke there. You're right. It's difficult to get the president himself to admit, yes, I did these things, but the evidence is mounting. But I will point out, Julie, the narrative has changed for much of the so-called mainstream media, for much of the Democrats, and for much of their allies, even members of Congress, saying, hey, they no longer say the president didn't know about it, which was never credible, of course. Every father talks to his son or daughter about what they do for a living and their business dealings and their work and that sort of thing. But now the narrative is no longer that he didn't know about it. Now it's, well, he was not in business with Hunter formally, as if that makes or reduces his culpability when he was the one, sitting beside him on the phone, meeting with him. Jamie Comer has told us that they have evidence the president met with Hunter and his business associates some 80 times while he was vice president.
Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to learning more. It seems like there's something going on there. It's hard. It's just,
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Congressman, what about the prospects for a government shutdown? It almost feels like a foregone conclusion at this point.
Well, my hope would be that we do not do what we did with the debt ceiling, where Republicans sadly and unfortunately betrayed the American people who gave us the majority when we ran on fiscal responsibility And we surrendered all of our leverage as a House majority, and we discarded all of the wonderful things we put in the Limit, Save, Grow bill back in April, and we simply adopted the Democrat position to avoid the fear-mongering and the scare tactics of a supposed default, which was never going to happen, by the way. I can explain to you why that would never happen. That was never a true risk there. But Republicans came together with Democrats, sadly and unfortunately, our leadership and two-thirds of Republicans, and adopted a Democrat position, which was an unlimited increase of debt ceiling, as much money as we can come together and spend until January 25, and we essentially kept all the spending level. We adopted the Biden spending levels for the next year and a half. My hope is we don't do that in order to avoid, quote, a shutdown. 85% of operations continue. Only those non-essential activities are suspended. We probably shouldn't be doing those activities anyway. We pay the federal employees, which is egregious. That shouldn't happen. But we ought to use every tool at our disposal, including, if necessary, a government shutdown. Now, that said, my conservative colleagues and I have talked about being willing to go along with a continuing resolution only if we traded that in exchange for H.R. 2, our border security bill, and the firing of Mayorkas. If we fire Mayorkas and secure the border and implement the bill that we passed out of the House, H.R. 2, the strongest border security bill in the history of the country that would codify into law the Trump policies, we'd be willing to trade that for a 1% or 2% reduction in spending in a CR to buy us time to the end of the year to get our spending bills passed. But to just go along with the CR to avoid a shutdown that keeps spending at the current level and doesn't get anything for the American people, we should not do that.
But Congress doesn't have the authority to fire Mayorkas, do you?
Well, the president has the authority to do it, and so it would be a deal with the president because he has to sign the bill anyway. He has to sign the bill for the border security bill. Now, what Congress can do is to cut his salary, and we ought to do that in the Homeland Security funding, the funding of that bill anyway. We ought to cut his salary because obviously he's not doing his job unless you would take the Biden position that his job is to facilitate a border invasion.
Well, sounds like you're
he's telling the truth when he says there is. He is telling the truth when he says the border is under control, but it's under the control of the Biden or the Mexican crime cartels. That's who it's under control of, certainly not by our Border Patrol, because Mayorkas will not let them do their jobs.
Wow. All right. I'll stay tuned for more. Thank you so much, Congressman. Great to talk to you.
Great to be with you, Julie. Thanks for what you do.